You're watching Timeless Talks, timeless subjects, information for life. I'm kind of glad we can kind of all be together here. Georgia, the other day someone asked me why I do what I do. They're talking about speaking and the Timeless Talks and Facebook and YouTube and the courses we put out and why we provide so much information. Well, the answer to that goes back a long time ago. Goes back starts out in July the 7th of 1967. That's an awful long time ago. Was that 55 years ago, almost? But at that time, in front of the Clinton Church of Christ, I said that I believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God. And I already made up my mind to change my ways to being more God-centered. And they immersed me completely in water. My sins were forgiven. One thing didn't happen that night, though, was when they were raising me up out of the water, a grave of baptism. I knew my sins was gone. I was hoping God would just zap me with a lightning bolt or something, kill me right there on the spot. So I know then I'd go to heaven. Wouldn't have a chance to mess up ever again. 4 years later, John Baldwin was our preacher, and he got me and Benton Jr. and Gary and Johnny, and I think Johnny Mizell was the other one. We had two Johnnies. Johnny James, Johnny Mizell. And he got us in a room, and he showed us how to start organizing Bible thoughts and how to talk about and find scriptures, and we built a sermon on paper. And then we kind of memorized it over the next couple of weeks, and when I was 16, in that summer of my 16th year, I got to stand up and speak before the Clinton Church of Christ for the first time. 2 years later, I've already gone to Harding. My first semester, I had been a accounting major. Then I decided I was going to be a band director. I'd been in band since the 4th grade, and I knew music pretty good. Still do. I'm glad for what I learned. Before I started home, the church, one of the churches there in Searcy, mentioned that they were having May campaigns, and that one of those campaigns was back to my hometown. I couldn't believe it. Now, if you don't know what a campaign is, that's, some people call it a revival, okay? That's kind of what it was. And there was like 10 or 12 of us from Harding, went over to Clinton, and beginning that 3rd week of May, we started knocking on every door that we could get to. And we'd set up Bible studies and conduct Bible studies to teach people what they needed to do to be saved and to show them Jesus. The little congregation that Clinton was at the time when we started was like 80. That little building we were in would probably seat 125, maybe 130. And that'd be pretty full. Come that 3rd night, though, that Wednesday, all kinds of things had happened that day. This black lady by the name of Angie Martin walked in the door. Now Angie was about as sincere and straight as they could come, but she was black. That made it unusual because some of us had been up in that part of the world, literally up in that part of the world where the black people lived, and had been knocking on the doors and had taught Angie that day. And she come down there that night and she says, I've been thinking about what they've been saying, and I know full well that if I got to get baptized quick because the Lord may come back before the end of this service, and then where would I be? So if it's all right, I want to be baptized before church. Well, we took care of Angie. But then the service started, and it was full. There was at least 150. Might have been 175 people in that building. I don't know how we got in there. They got the chairs out of the classroom and up and down the sides, around the front, and I mean it was full. Up about 3 rows in front of me was Frida Story. Frida Story. And in front of her was some other of my high school friends. They were Christians. Bunches of them were. I mean, Mike and Cheryl and a whole bunch of them anyway. Geraldine, I'm just a bunch of them. All sitting up there. Gary Martin was a speaker, and the particular sermon that he did that night wasn't just out of this world crazy good. It wasn't. But when they started singing that invitation song at the end of the service, people, it was kind of interesting to watch for a few minutes, because the people at the front had to clear out the front pews because people just started walking down through there, not in ones and twos, but in threes and fours. There was just all kinds of people going down front. Some of my high school friends were going down there. And I knew that they were going to be confessing their sins and their lives were going to be changed. And I'm like, well, this is good. This is really good. And we got people going down there already. We baptized someone tonight. Boy, this is going to be great. But when Frida's story made a motion to get herself excused out to the aisle herself, boy, that shook me. Frida, boy, she was a sweet girl back when in high school, but she ran with a group of people who was a little more outgoing, and I wasn't too sure what they were doing some of the time. I mean, they might have been drinking beer or alcohol or something. I don't know. I'd wanted to date her, but because the people she went with a lot, well, I knew I didn't have a chance, so I didn't even bother asking. When I saw her making her way to that aisle to go up front and confess her sins, well, there wasn't many things quite like that. Not many things in this world like that. I almost like I'm doing now. I just started bawling. Because every time I've thought about Frida's story since then, I've thought about the change she made. And she really did make it. And all I could do was sit down that night on the pew. Everybody else was standing up singing. And a couple of the people around me, maybe Mark Brickman, my future roommate, put his hand on me and patted me, and he understood. By the next morning, I was pretty certain that I would not go back to Harding as an accounting major or a band major, music major, no. I was going to go figure out as much as I could about this book and started doing what Gary Martin was doing. And I'd seen W.A. Bradfield and so many other very, very powerful hellfire and brimstone preachers. I'd seen Jimmy Allen preach at some other congregations, and masses of people doing that same thing. And I decided when Frida got up and moved, I said, I'm going to do that. I'm going to figure out a way to learn this book so I can tell people how to change their lives and how they can have a good life and how important that can be to them to change their lives. And Georgia, maybe, just maybe, because they changed their lives, maybe they can be with me in heaven someday if they'll stay with it and keep working hard at it every day. So I want to change people's lives for the good now and eternity too. God's blessed me with wherever we've gone, whatever we've done, even in the last 8 or 9 days, because of the work of Timeless Talks and the connections that I've been afforded. I teach in Zimbabwe once a week, me and another preacher, and 5 souls have made up their mind to change and be like Christ. They confessed their faith and changed their ways and been immersed to have their sins forgiven. 5 people. I was told by the man himself out of here to go everywhere, tell about him, baptize them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit for the forgiveness of their sins, and then to keep on teaching them some more. That's why I do what I do. I wish Frida knew. I wish I had a chance to tell her how much her change in life had changed my life. That's a rather emotional thing. tell you about another motion though I had, and it wasn't so good. It was me and Benton Jr. and Dean and Johnny Mizell. We headed down to East Mountain, and we're gonna go find that haunted house. And yeah.